¿Qué onda, amigos? ¿Cómo están? Bienvenidos a este nuevo episodio de su podcast ¿Qué te tomas? Yo soy Beto Ríos, su podcast host. Estamos de regreso, raza, de regreso. Y otra vez no puedo decir en su podcast favorito porque pues hoy estoy otra vez con un podcaster y la verdad no quiero competiciones, pero en uno de sus podcasts favoritos, bien contento de estar acá. Porque pues la persona que estamos entrevistando hoy, la neta, la admiro bastante. El movimiento que está trayendo para hacernos sentir que podemos ser quien queremos ser, lo admiro un chingo y me encanta y me siento identificado. Así que, ¿sabes qué? Vamos a invitar al Pabel. Pabel, bienvenido a ¿Qué te tomas, carnal?
Hey, un placer. Y ahora es que yo digo que yo me estoy tomando.
Sí. ¿Qué te estás tomando, carnal?
Bueno, aquí en Nueva York son las 12:05 y yo me levanté un poco tarde, pues todavía me estoy tomando un cafecito. Y
Hey,
ya tuve el Popeye con el café Bustelo ahí.
oye, está chingón, está chingona tu taza, es really cool, man. Sí, yo le
Gracias.
mandé un mensaje al Pabel, le digo, hey, ¿sabes qué van a ser las 9 de la mañana en California? Yo me voy a tomar lo que tú te tomes, pero relajado, hermano, porque 9 de la mañana no quiero, no, me hice un café, Dije, qué chingón, gracias, cara.
Yo no sabía que si te iba a tomar un mimosa tempranito.
Hey, that would have been a good thing, man, but hey, Pavel, muchas gracias, de verdad. I'm so excited to talk to you, man, because I've been following your journey, from the things that you've done, the things that you're doing, and the movement that you're starting. Where trying to help us Latinos, Latinx people of color, to be who we want to be. Who we really are, without having to hide behind that veil of what people want us to be. So. But before we get into that, this is a podcast of immigrants or children of immigrants, and I want to hear about, your story and how you got here, man. So, dude, how is it that your family or you got to the U.S., man?
Yeah, I mean, so I was born and raised in New York City, pero las familias son de la República Dominicana. O sea,
Okay.
toda la familia mía se nacieron y se criaron en la República Dominicana. Y cuando uno piensa de la familia, a mí me gusta pensar como 2, 3 generaciones antes. Y cuando
Claro.
yo pienso en eso, yo me crié con mi abuelo y mi abuela, que son otra vez de la República Dominicana, pero ellos se criaron en una época del país que era de dictadura. O sea, es eso, cuando uno piensa tiempo de dictadura, necesita pensar en la era de Trujillo, Rafael Trujillo que se llamó,
Sí,
y él, o sea, los privilegios que nosotros tenemos en los Estados Unidos, eso no lo tenían cuando ellos se estaban criando. O sea, por ejemplo, mi abuelo siempre tenía un saco, siempre. Y hasta cuando inmigró a los Estados Unidos y estaba en Nueva York, y él tenía como una bebida con su amigo en la casa, o sea, ni una discoteca, ni una barra, en
sí,
propio casa de amigos se ponía un saco entero. Y yo digo, coño, pero ¿por qué mi abuelo se pone un saco cada vez, todos los días?
sí,
Es la idea de él quería impresionar a la gente antes
claro,
que la gente tenían like a like a negative perception of him. O sea, that
right,
idea of like first impression. Y era porque en la era de Trujillo, like you didn't want to stand out, you didn't want to be seen as like suspicious, you didn't want to be seen as like a potential criminal, right? So that idea of like impacting someone's perception before they saw you was really important for him. But when they immigrated to New York, they came to the Upper West Side in New York. And I don't know if you know about the Upper West Side, but
no,
it's a
can you talk to
very
us about it? Yeah,
it's one of the wealthiest zip codes in the United States. But a donde yo viví, en el edificio mío, era lleno de inmigrantes. O sea, a lot of Dominicans,
okay,
Puerto Ricans, black folks, but it's just one building. O sea, imagínate un edificio de pobreza, pero alrededor del edificio, muchísimo de dinero. Por ejemplo, ¿tú sabes la película Home Alone?
sí,
Down the street, o sea, una cuadra al lado de mí vivía Macaulay Culkin, el niño de Home Alone.
really,
O sea, la ciudad de Nueva York, siempre dicen que Nueva York es un melting pot. No, ¿verdad? Que es una mezcla de vaina, pero siempre hablan de la mezcla de cultura, no hablan mucho la gente de la mezcla de dinero. O sea, En una
Claro.
cuadra, pobreza, y la próxima cuadra, riqueza. O sea, cuando yo salía de mi edificio, de ese edificio de pobreza, yo veía la posibilidad
Sí, sí, sí,
de
sí,
qué lo
claro.
puede ser, de lo que puede ser mi vida. Pero también en ese edificio que vivía en Macaulay Culkin, nadie se parecía a mí. O sea, pues yo era cerca para ver la posibilidad, pero yo no sabía cómo hacerlo. Por eso como yo me creía.
Fíjate, está bien interesante, cabrón, eso que dices, porque, por ejemplo, ¿no? Donde yo vivo en California y en las ciudades acá, y creo que pasa en todo Estados Unidos. New York es un caso bien interesante, porque you're right, you can be living across the street from a very wealthy person, like literally meters away, or, feet away. Here,
Yeah.
it's not so much the case. I mean, it's happening more with gentrification now, but like you are usually like you live in a neighborhood where everybody is the same, everybody's immigrants, and you don't see a rich person in miles around.
Yeah.
So that must have been a crazy experience. Like you could see, because a lot of times, nosotros viviendo en lugares segregados, no lo ves, ¿sabes? Como estás en un lugar, no es como que a lo mejor vas al mall y ves a la gente, pero everybody looks the same. But I mean, I remember, dude, like I'm gonna share a little story with you. Like I moved here when I was 17, and we went to play soccer, fútbol, en esta high school, ¿no? Creo que se llamaba American River, una cosa así. Y pues nosotros, nuestro uniforme, a veces nos ponían a barro a nosotros, ¿no? Íbamos a nuestro bus de la escuela, llegamos. Y pues era una escuela no segregada, pero pobre, ¿no? La de nosotros, no teníamos mucho dinero. Llegamos ahí, tenían 2 o 3 coaches, shades, everybody had a locker. Beautiful, beautiful school. And I was like, what? This is the high school that I used to think that I was gonna get, from watching fucking movies in Mexico. I'm like, pensé que todos eran iguales a mí. Entonces está cabrón que tú podías ver a la raza ahí que era pues más rica que tú. Entonces tu abuelo llega y ¿se conocen aquí tus abuelos o se conocieron en la República Dominicana?
Se conocieron en la República Dominicana. O sea, mi abuelo vino solo al principio. Y, o sea, yo no sé el lío que él hizo para llegar aquí, para conseguir los papeles, porque en la época de Trujillo, en una dictadura, no
Sí.
dejan la gente viajar así. O sea, es como un número específicamente de gente que puede salir al año, puede ser. Pues yo no sé cómo lo hizo, pero llegó aquí, consiguió su papel y toda la vaina, y estaba trabajando en varias factorías, y después cuando tenía, tú sabes, un poco de dinero, mandó para la familia para que venga para acá. O sea, mi mamá ya estaba nacida en la República Dominicana, y cuando llegó para acá, tú sabes, conoció mi padre, mi papá, y tú sabes, me tenía a mí.
Sí, 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 sí.
Pero, para ponértelo claro, yo no crecí con mi papá. O sea, yo me
Ok.
creí con mis 2 abuelos, o sea, mi abuelo y mi abuela y mi mamá en una habitación de 2 dormitorios. O sea, lo cómico que yo digo que yo no tenía mi propio cuarto hasta que yo me fui para la escuela, para el colegio, en la universidad. Yo tenía, yo y mi mamá tenía, o sea, el cuarto era de nosotros.
Wow, qué interesante. Me imagino que debe haber sido difícil, cabrón, ¿no? De morro. O sea, I mean, you're growing up, dude. Like, there is things happening to your body that you don't know what the fuck is going on.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Estar ahí con la jeva. But it's interesting, man. Like, this should be said out loud. Like, I don't think a lot of people realize. I mean, we know. I mean, you come from an immigrant family, and also, from a group of people that you didn't have much.
Yeah.
So like we know what it is. I mean, my parents, like when they first moved to the U.S., when my mom was pregnant with me, they were living a lot of people in one house, and their room was the laundry room. No bed. Like that's where they used to sleep. But like this is the reality of how things happen, how dreams and fucking fortune in the U.S. But what I was gonna say is like I saw this podcast about this family that used to live like everybody in the same room. I mean, even with TikTok. Like I don't know if you've seen those TikToks where like there is like 6-7 people living in a room. Nobody's
Yeah.
complaining because they know like that's how things are. Like they thought that's the way people live because they haven't seen anything else.
No, it's really interesting because like although I was living, so like even when I went to school, like middle school and high school, I went to school with like people that looked like me. Like it was all black, Puerto Rican, Dominican people in poverty essentially,
Sí.
and
Sí, sí.
I like everything that I was experiencing was normal. Like everyone grew up in public housing. or for the most
Right.
part, or next to public housing. Like, it wasn't until I went to university where I was like, wait, you have your own room? Like,
Yeah.
it's like I remember when I was in school, and people used to be excited to go back home. They were like, oh, I can't wait to sleep on my queen size bed and all this stuff. I never knew what a queen size bed felt like until I graduated college. Cause like I never wanted to go back home. Like, I wanted to stay in
yeah.
school even for vacation, because home, like, I would have to, like, I didn't have a doormat. Like, the crackheads would have doormen. You know what I mean? Like, like
That's a hell of a joke.
my bed in college was better than my bed at home. You know what I mean? Like, it
Yeah.
was. So I was excited to see my friends and family, but the living condition, like, the dorms were better than my room.
Yeah, it was a step up.
Yeah,
So have you been back to Dominican Republic?
I have.
How was that?
I
How was
have.
that? How was your experience? You know, like having grown up in the U.S. and going back to see family.
Wow, lo interesante de cuando yo me estaba criando es que mi abuela, yo le amo a mi abuela, o sea, por varias razones, pero ella me enseñó la cultura, o sea,
Claro.
del principio, o sea, ella me enseñó el español, era mi primer idioma, y yo conocí inglés en la escuela, pero todos los años, por casi 10 años casi 10 años, yo iba a la República Dominicana 2 veces al año para la Navidad.
Wow.
Y, o sea, para la Navidad comencé y seguí, o sea, me quedé ahí hasta el Año Nuevo y para el verano. O sea, cada vacaciones, cada oportunidad que yo tenía, ella me llevaba. Y eso era muy importante. O sea, yo conocí, o sea, el idioma ya lo tenía, pero la música, la comida, la gente,
Sí.
toda esa mezcla de cultura, yo lo conocí, suerte a ella, porque ella me lo quería enseñar. Pero algo interesante también que ella me enseñó es como este sentido de siempre regalar a lo que tienen menos que tú. O sea, mira, yo viviendo en el Upper West Side, Nueva York, yo creía que yo era pobre. No, ¿verdad? Porque yo estaba alrededor de riqueza, pero cuando yo voy a Santo Domingo, soy yo el rico. O sea, cada vez que yo viajo para allá, yo llevo 2 maletas. Una maleta ni es para mí, es para regalo, es para comida y todo para regalar cuando uno llega a la familia, a los amigos, toda esa vaina. O sea, no da más la cultura, pero ella me enseñó mucho de la idea de dar a la gente que tenga menos que tú.
Es cierto lo que dicen, que a veces la gente que menos tiene es la que más se anima a dar, ¿sabes? Porque, pero o sea, pero you could see too that like the differences between, like, de la manera en que tú estabas viviendo y la manera en que está viviendo la gente que se quedó en República Dominicana, ¿no?
Inmediatamente. O sea, cosas sencillas que uno ni piensa. O sea, cuando se va la luz en la ciudad entera. O sea, o sea, yo salgo de mi apartamento ahora en Nueva York y a veces a mí se me olvida, yo dejo la luz prendida.
Sí.
¿No, verdad? O yo dejo la llave corriendo con agua. O sea, en la República Dominicana yo tengo familia que tenga un poco más dinero y yo tengo familia que tiene un poco menos dinero. O sea, yo siempre me he quedado con la familia que tenía un poco menos de dinero. Y, o sea, yo caminaba como alguna cuadra para buscar la agua en un pote y llevarlo para la casa. O sea, vaina así que uno ni piensa que uno va a hacer en los Estados Unidos, pero eso es igual que yo haciendo café en la mañana. Ellos buscan la agua toda la mañana.
Wow. No, cabrón, la verdad, especialmente ahorita que estamos viviendo en un momento, a mí me apasiona bastante hablar acerca de cómo nos estamos acabando el planeta, ¿no? Acerca de ser más conscientes, ¿no? De exactamente lo que tú dices, de la manera en que utilizamos la energía, de la manera en que la producimos, de la manera en que, no mames, a lo mejor no pasa en Nueva York, ¿no? Pero, por ejemplo, the grocery store by my house is like less than a mile away.
Yeah.
Si estuviera en México, I would walk that. Every single day. I would go to the store walking, you know. And it's not even, ni siquiera sería porque no tuviera coche, sino porque that's the way things are done. Y aquí, I drive, dude. Yeah. It's like, dude, why? Sí,
I just
creo
got a car y yo hago lo mismo.
sí. Oye, a ver, ¿y cómo es eso de tener un carro en Nueva York? ¿Sí es cierto que es mucho show? O sea, para el parking y todo eso.
Bueno, yo no vivo en la ciudad, ya. O sea, yo me
Ah,
creí
ok.
en la ciudad, pero ahora yo vivo en el Bronx, pero el Bronx como un suburb. O sea,
Ok,
yo tengo
ok,
un
ok.
parqueo afuera que es mío propiamente del edificio.
Ok,
Pero
chingón.
yo hago igual, yo me estoy poniendo golo porque ya no camino.
Sí, me imagino. Y en Nueva York, o sea, en todas se utiliza mucho el public transportation, ¿no? Esa es parte de la vida
Sí.
diaria de Nueva York. ¿Sabes qué? Admiro mucho a tu abuela y que me da un montón de gusto, cabrón, que tuviste la oportunidad de ir y visitar y ser parte de... A mí, esos niños, o sea, todos tenemos diferentes posibilidades. Muchos niños no podían regresar, aunque crecieron en Estados
Ya.
Unidos, ¿no? O sea, que se los
Sí,
traen documentados de bebés y crecen aquí y no
sí.
pueden ver a su familia. Pero me acuerdo yo, porque yo llegué aquí más tarde, los niños que llevaban cada año eran niños que me encantaba verlos, ¿no? O sea, niños que los llevaban cada verano, se quedaban 3 meses y era pura diversión, pero al mismo tiempo ellos aprendían de nosotros y nosotros aprendíamos de ellos. O sea, algunas palabras en inglés o los juegos que iban a salir de Nintendo, Super Nintendo, lo que fuera. They would tell us because they had it before we did, you know. Qué perro, güey. Me da un montón de gusto. Entonces, tú creces acá, te viene, o sea, siempre quisiste trabajar en tecnología, es algo que era tu meta.
A mí no me importaba en qué yo iba a trabajar, lo único que yo sabía es que yo quería ser rico. Yo no quería vivir como yo vivía cuando me creí en ese edificio en la área de pobreza. O sea, yo no me importaba qué yo iba a hacer, pero yo iba a hacer dinero.
Ya estoy aquí, hey, estaba hablando con unos compas hace poco y estamos hablando de eso, esto fue hace como unos 6 años, ¿no? Nos acabamos de graduar de la universidad, estamos todos sentados comiendo barbecue, having a beer. Y todos pues no estamos ganando mucho, ¿no? Recién graduados, some of us were interns, y nos veíamos como tristes. Y dice uno, ya nos venimos a Estados Unidos, ya dejamos a toda la familia ya, y vamos a ser pobres. No, no mames, no mames. O sea, it's fucking inconceivable. And this is where I wanted to go with this conversation, right? Because you say everything, I would do anything needed to be, to have money.
Yeah.
And you start working in tech, and then you start making money. You were very transparent about it on LinkedIn. So you start making money, and then you realize, shit, I don't think I'm willing to do everything to make money, because now you're pulling back a little bit and thinking, okay, dude, I am not who I am. How did that come to be, man? Like, you wanted to make money, but then ahora quieres ser quien quieres ser. ¿Qué pasó?
Yeah, una pregunta poderosa esa pregunta. Y es interesante porque mucha familia de inmigrantes, los hijos, las hijas, vienen y le sienten como un pressure que le pone la familia que, mira, tú necesitas ser doctor o ingeniero o, tú sabes, un profesional de respeto, ¿no? ¿Verdad? Le dicen cada vez. Y
Sí.
yo nunca me han dicho eso. Yo tengo un privilegio, una suerte, yo no sé cómo decirlo, pero me siento una suerte que mi mamá ni nadie me han dicho eso. Siempre me han dado la oportunidad to figure out what I wanted to be. Soy yo que me pongo eso en todos los días. O sea, nadie me ha dicho, mira, Pabel, tú necesitas hacer este dinero para hacer lo que sea. Like, I tell myself, I want to be rich. Nadie me lo ha dicho. Pero lo que me estaban diciendo de una edad, o sea, joven, mi abuelo me dijo, mira, do you see presidents, CEOs with beards, with tattoos, with earrings, with braids? No, pues pórtate así. Y yo digo, coño, pero toda la gente que él me está enseñando no me parecen a mí. O sea,
Sí.
parecen gringo, americano, blanco y viejo. Y yo pienso, coño, pero si yo quiero ser rico, I need to give up parts of my identidad. And I did that slowly, and eventually I got to a point where, like, yo ni me conocí. Yo era una persona completamente diferente, como hablaba, como me vestía, the lies that I would tell my coworkers. And it was at a point where I was making good money. Like, my last job, I was making like $300,000 in a year.
Wow.
But, like, it was at a point where, like, I was like, I'm not comfortable living a lie of who I am. Like, I'd rather be myself and not work for this corporation or any of those kind of things. But there's a lot of stuff that happened in between, but that's kind of like what it was. So I quit my job recently, and now I'm working full time for myself.
Sabes, eso que dices, hace no tanto leí un libro se llama You Sound Like a White Girl. I don't know if you heard about this book. You have?
No,
Yeah.
no lo he leído, pero eso suena como mi vida.
Sí, güey. Y I mean, long story short, is the story like the whole book starts with, and I think I mentioned this in the podcast to my audience. I'm sorry, but I'm passionate about this book. This is a great book, you know, for people that grew up or at some point in their life had to assimilate to other culture. It doesn't necessarily have to be to white culture, but to culture, you know.
Yeah.
Y dice que uno de sus novios le dijo que, hey, you sound like a white girl. You know, she's from Texas, and she took it as a compliment. You know, it's like, oh shit, do I? Oh, nice. But he didn't mean it as a compliment. He meant it as, dude, you're Mexican. You know, what the hell is going on? You know, and there was a quote there that I liked and I wanted to share with you because it describes exactly what you're saying. He says, the most painful aspect of assimilation is the loss of who you are. And it really is, dude. What do you think about that? Like,
It's real. I mean, here's the thing. Like, we have been trained to believe that a professional looks a certain way, talks a certain way, acts a certain way, right? Often we get criticized, people of color get criticized for, and we get called these things, these like general terms, like unprofessional, or this person doesn't look like they have executive presence, but we don't often think about like, what do those words actually mean, right? And it's fascinating. There was like a study that was released recently where, you know, in corporate and office environments, you often get a performance review. It's either like once a year or twice a year, right? Where your manager reviews all of your work and they give you a rating based on like how well you did, right? Most often, people of color in their review, the feedback that they received is not based on their performance or the work that they do, is based on their personality.
wow.
Which is weird, right? So we get things like, oh, that person was too aggressive, or this person dressed a certain way that was like unprofessional, or like their hair wasn't ready. Their hair wasn't ready for a meeting, which is interesting, right? So like I started digging deep into like, yo, what does professional mean? Like I looked up the definition, and it's defined as a skill or competence expected of someone in that profession. So it's only based on the skill or competence. It has nothing to do with how you look. So I did a TikTok video the other day. I do this often, right? But I put up a picture of Lil Wayne, right? He has like a gold grill. He has face tattoos. He has dreads that are different colors. He's black, so that's a whole nother thing, colorism. And I asked people a question. I was like, is this look unprofessional? And people in the comments would say certain things, right? And they'll be like, yes, the look is unprofessional, I wouldn't hire him. Or they'll be like, oh, well, it depends on what role is he in. Is he in a client-facing role? Is he sort of like working behind the scenes? But like what you start to see is that, or people will call out his tattoos and say like, oh no, like maybe if he had a chest tattoo that I wouldn't see, right? But what you start to see is just like people's bias. So certain people have bias towards people with face tattoos based on their own experience. Maybe they grew up in a neighborhood where they saw a lot of people with face tattoos, and those people with face tattoos did certain activities that you may have found unethical. Maybe. Right. I don't know. Maybe people with grills. You have a certain experience with people with grills. But bias is natural. It's natural to have bias. But the important part is to recognize that bias so that you know your bias and you can work on unlearning that, right? But there's bias against black people. There's bias against certain hairstyles. There's bias against people with beard. There's all types of bias. But at the end of the day, professionalism is just based on skill and competence. That's it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you an example too. Like, I don't know if you like going to cafes, but I go to cafes all the time, right?
I love it.
And I like my barista to look homeless. Like, if they look homeless, I'm like, yo, that's gonna be a good cup of coffee. You know what I mean? But like, if he or she looks like a stockbroker, I'm be like, nah, that's not gonna be good. But if I walk into a cafe, I need to recognize that bias and say, you know what, I'm gonna give this person a chance. Let me let them make a cup of coffee, and then I'm gonna taste it. And based on their skill to make that coffee, then I'll evaluate their performance. But often people judge us just based on how we look, and then they don't give us an opportunity to perform. So that's what needs to happen.
There is so much involved in this. This is not, only us, right? This is not a millennial thing. This is not a people or age thing. This is like, we've been trained since we were kids to feel in a specific way in the presence of some people.
Yeah.
But back to professionalism, I agree with you, man. Like, obviously, it's not even you, it's your research. And I think I texted you this. I started to grow my hair, and I remember you posted something about redefining professionalism. Like, man, I like that a lot. Because I remember my reasons to grow my hair were, dude, like, how is it that I'm gonna die and I'm not gonna see how my hair really looks, because my entire life I've always been buzzing it, and my parents are like, no, you gotta look professional. You have to cut it because you gotta look professional. But dude, ever since I was a kid, 12, 13 years old, I've always wanted to let it long. I wasn't expecting to feel the way I feel when I started growing it, like, and it wasn't easy, man. Like, I cannot tell you countless times people would tell me, dude, you gotta cut that off. You gotta cut that off. It doesn't look good. Like this and that, especially because I work in a public facing role. I was working for elected official, for a government agency, but they were cool with it. They're like, my boss, man, he used to come in and see me every day, and he was very supportive, like everybody within my team. It was people that weren't even part of my team that would make comments.
Yeah, and there's so many important things that you said there. O sea, una cosa importante que tú dijiste es que la idea de profesional no comienza cuando tú comienzas a trabajar. O sea, eso comienza con la familia. O sea, es la familia que nos enseña todo esto. Del pelo, de la barba, de los tatuajes, de los aretes, todo eso. Es la familia que nos enseña eso. O sea, hay una idea en el mundo que like the racism, the sexism, the lessons that were taught around professionalism, like, we need to teach white people this. No. Bueno, sí, pero también necesita enseñar nuestra gente eso, porque nuestra gente es la gente que nos está enseñando a nosotros.
Sí, 100%, cabrón.
Like, I would go, like, I do a lot of speaking engagements at, like, really big companies, and again, I'll put up a picture of Lil Wayne, and there are black women in the audience that say, I would never hire him. There are Latinas in the audience that say, I would never hire him. So, like, there's a lot of talk of, like, we need to teach white people, but we need to teach ourselves just as much about this. And the interesting thing about this as well is, like, another thing that I hear about speaking in speaking engagements, I would ask the question around, like, yo, what's stopping y'all from being your most authentic self? And something that I hear most often is, like, bueno, yo no quiero ser la única persona que me pongo mi pelo rizo, porque, si yo soy la única persona, me van a decir muchísima vaina a mí, porque yo soy la única persona, ¿no, verdad? Sí, pero imagínate por un momento, imagínate, ciérrate los ojos y piensa que, ¿y si yo no soy la única persona? ¿Y tú con tu pelo largo? ¿Y si tú no eres el único hombre en la oficina con el pelo largo? ¿Y si toda la gente en la oficina un día se levanta y dice, coño, ¿tú sabes algo? Yo estoy harto de esto. Yo quiero hacer mi propia regla. Sí. Y de ese día, lo que va a pasar es que alguien te va a ver a ti y te va a decir, coño, pero mira, Beto, él está haciendo lo que él le da la gana. Comenzando hoy, yo voy a hacer lo que me da la gana. Eso es lo que pasa. O sea, tú le vas a dar inspiración a una gente solamente por hacer lo que te da la gana. Eso es inspiración, solamente por hacer lo que te da gana, lo que te da la gana a ti. Lo que tú estás haciendo es que tú estás creyendo representación para otra persona.
Es muy cierto.
That's what it starts. And it's like a ripple effect. Like, it starts with one person in the office doing it, and then you'll slowly start to see more people doing it. And then eventually we can normalize that. Whatever it is you want to normalize, you can normalize it.
Just by starting, huh?
Just by starting.
Dude, that is
But
so
it takes
true.
bravery.
Like,
it takes bravery to be the person to start it.
Man, it's so true, man. Like, I was watching a movie yesterday, like most nights, and I was watching this movie about this lawyer that, he catches it's not related, but it's kind of is, to what we're speaking about right now. He catches this chemical company poisoning whole 70,000 people in a community, like whole ass poisoning, like a big percentage of them getting cancer, etc. and he catches them, and he actually works for a firm that protects chemical companies. His job is to protect these people, but these specific companies not their clients. So he goes in a fucking career long battle against this company. Starts in like in the 90s, and he doesn't resolve until like 2015. It was 20 years of his life, and he suffered. His family suffered. He started getting pay cuts rather than making more money because he was fighting for what he was believing. To be the right thing. And I told my wife, I'm like, we're watching this, and like obviously we're getting sentimental. And I'm like, man, why is it that people that change the world have to suffer so fucking much? Like it really is true, man. Like we're speaking about having to be yourself out there in an area that doesn't necessarily want you to be yourself. So there is gonna be retaliation. It might not be direct, but it's gonna happen, and you're gonna suffer. But like, you have to be motivated by wanting to be who you want to be, and understanding that what you said, you are creating representation. Like, one of my the podcast guests that I invited, she said something that fucking struck me. She's like, "Look, it's not about being at a tech company and being Latino. That's just a statistic. You have to go in and not let yourself, not assimilate to what everybody else is doing. You have to be yourself, because if not, you just become a statistic." That was like, fuck. So that was deep, man. Like, I appreciate it. She's saying that. But yeah, dude. No, I agree with you 100%, man.
That's deep. I might steal that one.
Yeah, dude. You have to. I love to introduce you all. Like, her, it's Corporate Pero Latina. That's her handle.
Oh yeah.
Shout out to her.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she said it. I was like, oof, that is deep,
It is. Yeah. Her and I, it's just one of those, just like you and I, like we just met online. So yeah, I follow her. We're cool.
Awesome, man. So now, you quit your job, you quit TikTok because it wasn't letting you be who you wanted to be. And also it was kind of soul sucking from what I was reading. It was taking more than you wanted to give. They wanted you to work long hours, but like not necessarily, in a way that was supportive, right? Like you said at some point, look, I don't mind doing the job, but I want to be respected, right? So what was that experience? Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of interesting things that happened while I was working at TikTok. And one of these things go back to this idea of professionalism, right? When our family gives us advice, I think a lot of the advice that they give us is based on fear or, their own personal experiences to what life was like 30, 40 years ago when they were starting off their career, right? And something you got to realize is that times, although things are similar, things are very different from when they started. And the fears that they had of being like, maybe deported or fired from their job or like a bunch of things, like maybe there are like a bit more protections in place now. For example, like it's easier to get a job now, right? There's like LinkedIn. It's just things are very different, right? So I always say that like the advice that our family gives us has an expiration date. Like they aren't in the spaces that we're in. They don't have the opportunities that we have, right? So, here's an example. Like, I remember my mom or like, I remember family growing up, they were like, don't tell anyone how much money you make, right? That's something that is often told to us, right? So I've always carried that with me. But what I realized is that not telling people how much money you make contributes to what we see now in like the wage gap between just men and women. Women of color often get hurt the most from that. Yeah. And so what I did when I was working at TikTok is that on LinkedIn, I published my salary transparently. I was like, this is my base, this is my bonus, this is my signing bonus, this is my stock. I just put it all out there. And it's rare for people to do that for a bunch of reasons. One, it may create envy. We've been trained to believe that we shouldn't do that. And we've even been trained to believe that like we can get fired for it. But when I did research, I was like, oh, Obama passed a protection to protect employees from speaking about this openly. And he did that because he understood that it contributes to a wage gap that is unfortunately hurting people that look like you and I. And when I did it, the post went absolutely viral. It had like 3-4 million views in like a week.
Wow.
And
Dude. That's how important it was for people.
a few powerful things happened though, right? Like one of the my messages went crazy, but this young Dominican kid messaged me. He was like, I didn't even know somebody that looked like me could make that much money. Going back to representation, right?
Wow.
Something else that I realized was, like, I read a lot about a wage gap, right? And you hear about like men and women, but like people would message me and be like, yo, thank you for doing this. This sparked a conversation within my team. And I'm realizing something that came out of it is like women consistently get paid less, is what people were telling me after having conversations internally. And then the last thing, which was like the TikTok experience, was like a leader within TikTok told me that I shouldn't have done that. They said that I should have tried to handle things internally, and then told me that I shouldn't talk to press. Essentially, like, I felt like I was being censored or like attempted to be censored. And I was like, it's not like I'm giving up company secrets. Like, why would you want me not to say this? This is just my salary, right? And I think it's because it makes leaders' jobs more difficult. It makes them now have to pay people a little bit more, and it makes maybe recruiting more difficult. But like, that's not my problem. That's a TikTok problem, because maybe they don't want to pay people as much, right? If you paid everyone the same at the same position, we wouldn't be in this problem, or you wouldn't be in this problem, right? The only reason companies don't want you to talk about salary openly is because they're paying us all differently. That's a fact.
That is so true. And the thing is, we are so afraid to ask, at the same, like, with my friends, we try to be as transparent as possible. Like lately, the most, I think now that it has a lot to do with us being more comfortable with what we make. Like, I think there is a stigma to not making a lot of money, and I think that we are afraid of saying, oh shit, I make this much. Maybe I shouldn't say it, because it also has to do with knowing what you're worth, because a lot of times you feel like you're worth so much more money, and you're paid a lot less than that. And I know it happens to me. It has happened in the past, previous jobs where I know I'm worth more. They're not paying me what I'm worth. And then I'm like, fuck, I'd rather not say, because I'm going to look stupid, by letting a job pay me less than what I'm worth. That's something that's,
Yeah, we got to let go of that ego. Like, imagine that situation. Imagine you got like 4 of your boys, and amongst the 5 of you, you're like, yo, I'm making this much. And you realize, let's just say that you're the lowest paid person amongst your friends group. Yeah. Like, to me, that's an opportunity. Like, yo, friends, teach me how you got there so that I could level up my game. And then 100%. When you level up your game, maybe you start out earning them, and you're like, yo, how did they do it? Like what do they say? Like, a rising tide lifts all boats.
Yep.
Like,
that's right.
And don't you, like, imagine your friends trying to plan a vacation. You think they don't want you to make more money so y'all could do some better shit? You know what I mean?
Yeah, dude. I'm tired of Airbnb 10 people in 2 rooms, man. I'm done with that shit.
Yo, if your friends don't want you to win, like, they're not your friends, yo. Let go of them friends.
I know, dude. No. That's I think that, like, we should be more brave at that. Like, I mean, with my friends, we all work in different positions and like different types of jobs, but we try to say to each other, like, anytime we get like a pay bump and all that. And I think all friends should do that, man. Like, I think as a group, your group of friends, and I'm talking to you audience right now, tus amigos, o sea, si son 7, 8 cabrones o cabronas, siéntense y platiquen. Hey, ¿cuánto ganas? Porque está bien compartir. Como dice Pabel, así se pueden ayudar ustedes a ganar más dinero. Creo que la vida no es acerca de ganar billete todo el tiempo, ¿no? Eso está claro. Pero sí se trata de recibir lo que te mereces. Y usualmente, si te juntas con un grupo de personas que piensan igual, usualmente también tienen las mismas habilidades, y no tiene uno por qué estar ganando el triple que tú. O sea, tenemos que hacerlo más parejo, ¿no? Sí. Especialmente si es if this is an interracial group of friends, I think it has a lot more. It's a lot more important, Like, if it's like 5 of us Mexicans, yeah, it's cool, let's do it. But if it's like, if you have a group of friends that all of you are from different ethnicities, that will be a cool conversation to have. Especially if you have like similar job positions. Like, there you could see life if there is actually a discrepancy in pay because of the way you look. How cool would that be, man? Like, imagine you have 10 friends, and like that would be pretty badass. So, plural, carnal. Plural. So now you're on your own. You have this business and this. How do you call it? Like, is it a movement? Is it a? How do you refer to Plurawl?
Bueno, es interesante porque cuando yo comencé hace 2 años, pues lo comencé en la pandemia, en el 2020, y yo no tenía idea cómo yo iba a hacer dinero. O sea, en el principio yo ni quería hacer dinero. No que yo no quería, pero yo tenía trabajo. O sea, en ese tiempo yo estaba trabajando para Facebook. Me estaban tratando bien, me estaban pagando bien, estaba ahorrando, vacaciones, toda la vaina. Hasta cuando yo fui para TikTok, igual me estaban pagando bien. O sea, yo ni estaba pensando hacer dinero. Yo nada más tenía el movement que tú dices o the mission of redefining professionalism. Yo sé que eso era lo que yo quería hacer. Y yo comencé la compañía con arte y, o sea, camisas. O sea, yo pensaba que con arte yo podía comenzar una conversación entre cómo se ve la gente si le dejan ser su propia... Like, I felt like art could be the representation that I wish I had when I was younger. Like, I wanted to start a conversation with art. For example, like, if you look at the Yankees, I don't know how much you know about baseball, but they have a policy where they don't allow their players to have facial hair. They don't allow their players to have most traditional black hairstyles, like beards and afros and braids. Like, there's a lot of examples of black players going to the Yankees and having to cut off their braids or dreads. Again, going back to my grandfather or like your family telling you can't have long hair, because it's this idea of like what a professional is supposed to look like, right? So one of the early designs that I did was like Yankees players, but with beards and like facial hair and like
cool.
Trying to reimagine what they would be like if they were allowed to be themselves. But I mean, I think it worked in starting the conversation, but one of the most powerful things I did was start the podcast. Because going back to a lot of these conversations around work or even like how much you get paid, a lot of these conversations are happening anonymously or like in private, you know. Maybe you may tell like your closest friend, but most often like we don't talk about a lot of these things. So I wanted to be intentional and say like I'm gonna put a face and a name to each story so that people can start seeing themselves in each story. So that's doing really well. But even with that, where I am now is like I'm realizing that a lot of what I'm doing is not just like inspirational, it's really educational. And even a lot of the revenue that I'm making now, like companies are hiring me to educate their employee base and their leaders around authenticity in the workplace, bias, diversity and inclusion. So what Plurawl started was like a lifestyle brand, and what it's transitioning into is an educational technology brand. So I want to use all of the conversations, all of the content that we produce, and more so create a personalized learning experience for people depending on what needs you have within the organization. So that's kind of like what I'm pivoting into. And I'm creating some exciting things later in the future with technology and like the virtual reality space, but I'm in the process of that transition from like lifestyle brand to educational technology company.
Qué chingón, se escucha súper chingón. And dentro del Web3, no? Like the metaverse, is that what you're trying to build?
Yeah, I mean, hablando de arte, imagínate, NFTs and Web3, it's like everybody's thinking about arte. Específicamente no el arte físicamente, o sea, arte digital. O sea, eso es el origen de la marca, de Plurawl. Pues yo he comenzado a hacer NFTs, pero I haven't released it yet. But it's going back to that idea of like the Yankees. Like, I want you to see people and say like, wow, I've never seen a teacher that looks like that. You know what I mean? I've never seen an astronaut that looks like that. Like, I want people to feel almost like uncomfortable and be like, that's like, not a teacher.
Ooh, that is a mission, man. That is fucking cool, man. Like, I think I'm a big fan of comedy, you know. I'm actually, I want to be a comedian. Like, I've been trying to, like, I go up in open mics and stuff. And I think that's one of the best parts about comedy is eso. A poner a la gente incómoda con cosas que nos pasan diario, and then fucking pulling the rug under their feet, you know, and like...
Para que piensen.
Sí, es que de eso se trata. Creo que eso es una manera. Arte Es la única manera en que de verdad vamos a ver lo que está pasando. Hace poquito estaba viendo... ¿Sabes que aquí el arte en Estados Unidos no lo toman tan en serio? Hasta hace poco, ¿sabes que la pandemia nos enseñó eso? ¿Sabes? O sea, todo el mundo es hacer dinero, levántate, busca, ¿qué vas a hacer, cabrón? Limpia tu casa y cuando acabes, ¿qué vas a hacer, cabrón? Esto, siempre, actividad. You're fucking stressed. Like, they want your level of the stress levels to be so high. Yeah. And then, during the pandemic, you know, a lot of us had the privilege of being able to stay home to work. And then we realized that art was a way to release that stress and like learn who we really were, you know, like art is such a powerful tool, man. Y usualmente como los maestros que hacen arte son los que les pagan menos, güey. Mi esposa Janet, she is an art teacher, you know, she's an artist and she's an art teacher at a museum. And I mean, yeah, no, they make okay money, but to the service that they give these kids, you know, the release of energy and the development in their mind, I think it's should be. It's not even about the money. It should be recognized more. You know, I think we should recognize the value of that. That's pretty cool, man. Honestly, I love that. I love to see some of the designs. I went on your website. You know, I was checking out your shirts, and dude, like, I want to see what you do. Like, do you have any other characters that you're working on to make them look like different?
I have 10 characters right now.
Okay.
I'm working on 10 more. So I found. Yeah, so I have 10. I'm working on 10 more, but they probably won't be released till next year because right now I'm working on like updating the website to be a little bit more less like I still want to keep the lifestyle, but I want to transition it to be a little bit more business to business because that is where I'm getting most of my money from, and that's probably where the revenue will continue to be generated. Most of the stuff that I sell is working directly with businesses, not necessarily from art and apparel. Like, I still want to be able to show the lifestyle and show people like what professionalism is and change their perception. But I do want to make it easier to purchase some of my services, which are more business focused.
Yeah. And you deserve it. You know, like, I think you 100% deserve it because a lot of times, and I want to change that perception. Like, it's not my life goal, but I want to make sure that people understand, at least people that listen to the podcast, that the fact that you want to change the world doesn't mean you want to do it for free. And I'm not saying that everything that you do, you know, in life needs to have a monetary value attached to it. But dude, like, you need to sustain yourself, and it's like all of us, you know, we need to eat. Right? Like, Calle 13 said it better, you know, like, Residente. I'm a big fan of Residente. I don't know if you listen to his music.
Yeah.
And at some point in one of his songs, he says, okay, you want me to change the world, but you don't believe, you know, no me crees en lo que hago porque quieres que gane en pesos cubanos, ¿no? O sea, quieres que sea pobre contigo para poder representarte. No, cabrón, no se trata de eso. Se trata de que I'm fucking building a movement. And I'm trying to make a life of myself, but you need to understand that I'm doing this movement for all of us. You know, that's kind of the way I see things. You know, like, I don't think anybody should do anything for free. Anybody,
no,
except you being a guest on my podcast. You know, because I don't have any money to pay you, brother. So,
bro, eso es difícil. Eso es difícil también. O sea, imagínate, yo estaba haciendo buen dinero y yo dejé ese trabajo y ahora no hago nada. O sea, yo hago dinero, pero no lo que yo estaba haciendo.
Claro.
O sea, el pensamiento es que en algunos meses, puede ser en alguna semana, puede ser el próximo año, que yo regrese a lo que yo estaba haciendo con el dinero, que me paguen bien, pero ahora mismo yo no estoy ahí.
Yeah. So, go fucking purchase a shirt, okay? ¿Quién tú eres? Plural. Hey, carnal, de verdad, te agradezco, Pabel, que hayas venido y nos hayas compartido tu historia. Honestly, you know, this is very educational, and also, you know, I know that at the end of the day, that's not the goal, like being inspirational, but you are, man. You really are, you know, like being brave enough to be that different person, you know, like being brave enough to say, look, this is killing me, you know. I don't want to be someone else. I want to be who I am, and I want to invite you all to see this transition so that maybe you want to do it for yourselves. I admire that shit, man. Like, honestly, props to you. If there is anything that me or my audience can do to help that movement, brother, we're here for you. Thank you so much for sharing.
Se agradece. Lo único que yo quiero es que escuchen el podcast, Quién tú eres. Y si te gusta, leave a rating and a review. Pero se agradece la oportunidad para hablar mi historia.
100%. ¿Cómo te pueden encontrar a ti en Instagram?
Todo en plural. Instagram, TikTok, plural.
Fantastic. Porque, a ver, la gente a veces me escucha, pero no me siguen en redes y a veces pongo los posts, but they don't see, like, the way things are written. So, hey, raza, vayan, sigan a mi compa Pabel. ¿Te gustaría que te sigan en tu Instagram personal también?
Sí, si quieren.
Sí. Está ese, @Pabel, biceps.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Ya está. Pues, raza, muchas gracias, cuídense y nos escuchamos el siguiente episodio.